The hottest year on record. 2024 eclipsed 2023 as the warmest ever, smashing all warming limits scientists warned about. What does that mean for you and me and our future? I'm Annalise Borges, and this is The Stream. Year after year, we talk about rising temperatures and the dangers linked to man-made changes to our environment. 2024 is only different in that it surpasses our worst predictions and raises the stakes of the fight for climate justice. The year started with El Niño causing a massive drought in southern parts of Africa, killing crops and cattle, pushing 27 million people to the brink of food insecurity and famine. April saw schools closed in Bangladesh, India, and the Philippines due to the heat. Temperatures exceeded 43 Celsius in several areas there. October saw Hurricane Milton striking Florida 2 weeks after Hurricane Helene had made a landfall there. The compounding destruction upending lives for millions of people. Later that month, Spain registered over 200 deaths in Valencia when a year's worth of rain fell in just 8 hours. To discuss what we saw this past year and what it all means for their future and the future of their fight, we have joining us today 3 activists from different parts of the world. Shananine Calvillo Ramirez, a Mexican climate and food justice activist. Akash Ranison, an Indian activist, negotiator, and documentary filmmaker, author of I'm a Climate Optimist. And Manuela Doreen Kwofi, a climate advocate and lawyer from Ghana. Thank you all so much for being part of the stream today. Shananine, looking back at 2024 can be quite disheartening, I would say. Let's start with what is still fresh in people's minds, COP, which, let's be honest, if we ask loads of people in the streets these days, what was the main outtake from that meeting, very few people would be able to answer that. Mexican activists like you, Maria Reyes, said that COP failed the people and the planet once again. Do you agree with her?
Definitely. Organizing a lot in Mexico, we have understood that it is in these spaces where mostly wealthy and powerful people and now fossil fuel lobbyists, again, are the ones that are deciding for our future, and they're deciding for their interest as well. So this is why these COPs and also other multinational United Nations meetings are failing. At the same time, after COP, the plastics treaty negotiations were also happening, and we ended up with no treaty at all. And in the same sense, finance is an issue that is still not addressed by the countries. They are not acknowledging the reparations that they need to do to the global south countries, the ones that they have had the cost of development being put upon them. So right now we believe that in these spaces is not where our fight is going to end. This is why we create alternative spaces. In Mexico, we organized an anti-COP that was led by indigenous peoples and youth, because we believe that it is between us that the actual solutions are going to arise from.
And I'll ask you more about that, because it's been very interesting to see how much, to what level young people like you guys have been organizing. Emanuela, you attended this year's COP in Baku. Let's take a look at this clip and then I'll get your reaction. Take a look.
It is almost 4 a.m. here in Baku, Azerbaijan. COP29 has just now officially agreed to pledge to give $300 billion collectively by 2035. The sum is a joke and disgrace. It means nothing. In real life, this money will not yield the results that we must yield for climate change action, for real climate change action. We're all tired. It's almost 4 a.m. But in reality, the real tiredness comes from the fact that our governments, the global north, including European Union, try to run away from the responsibility, try to run away from the accountability. We will call them out because this money is not enough. It is not enough for climate change adaptation and also for climate change action. What you can do in these hard times is join your national movements. You must do this because our governments are clearly running away from responsibility. So you must call them out. I'm so tired. But tomorrow is a new day and we will live to fight a new day. And so must you. Join your movements, join your collective communities and fight.
So one outtake from the COP is that it allowed the richest countries to walk away without really paying their climate debt. Your thoughts on how little these conferences have to show for themselves year after year. Would you say, Emanuela, that these conferences, these meetings are doomed?
Yes, it's a two-way street, and I would start by saying we've really not made progress. And these conferences, the COP conferences for all, I mean, we are hit. This was the 29th one, and every year we've disappointed so many people that people have lost trust in these conferences. And this stems from geopolitics. I would attribute all of these disheartening outcomes of the COP to geopolitics, because the world leaders out there, they sit in those rooms behind their flags and they forget the people who are actually facing the brunt of climate change. And so COP is super beneficial, especially that we make progress on other parts. It's an opportunity for over 190 countries to come together and to make an agreement as to certain areas of climate change. But on the other hand, the geopolitics makes it have a very slow impact. That is what I would say.
That's a very interesting way of seeing it. So it's not really the meeting itself, it's how people are using it, I guess. Akash, since the very first climate treaty, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, signed in 1992, greenhouse gas emissions are actually up 44%, and the world is on track to warm more than 2.5 degrees Celsius. You call yourself a climate optimist. How can you still be optimistic about any of this?
So I totally agree to your point, and this is a very valid question because after the COP29 failure where we sit, it is a valid question to ask someone that how are you still optimistic about environment and trying to fix the problem of climate change. I totally get it. But again, when it comes to optimism, why are we preparing for COP30 in Brazil? We obviously have some optimism. Why are we here on this show? Obviously, we have some optimism. That's the reason we are trying to fight. That's the reason we are trying to raise our voice to the world leaders to still bring the possible change which we need to fix this problem.
I want to ask you also about what happened a few days before COP. Shananine, there were roaring floods in Spain that killed more than 200 people. Take a look at this post on TikTok and then I'll ask you a question about it.
My name is Ana, I'm from Valencia, Spain, and my sister lives in one of the towns that was affected by the storm. It's called Catarroja. It's been a month after the storm, and let me show you how the town is right now. So you can see the aftermath of the floods as soon as you're approaching the towns. This was about 5 minutes before getting to my sister's town, so you can imagine how strong the flood was, and you can see the damaged cars as soon as you enter the town. So some streets smelled so bad that I was gagging and even puked once, so I head to my sister's to get a face mask because I couldn't handle it. Some areas are better than others, like the city hall where the TV interviews people is pretty clean. I wonder why. But there are still some spots where people can get food from donations, so that means that people still need help in some way or another. We offered our help in 2 spots, but they had all under control, so that was great to hear. Honestly, I feel like what these towns need at the moment is heavy machinery to get all the mud out from parkings, and obviously financial help for all the small businesses and families so they can recover as quick as possible. This was very hard to see in person, but I was glad I could come and give you guys an update. So keep praying for these people because they will need every single prayer to keep moving forward. Adios.
So, Shananine, we also saw the second most intense Atlantic hurricane ever recorded over the Gulf of Mexico, Hurricane Milton. But those events, flooding in Spain, hurricanes in the US, still got a lot of attention if compared to, let's say, the drought that afflicted Africa and impacted millions of people there. Even though climate change is a common denominator and everybody will suffer, some people will still pay a higher price. Right. And can you tell us about the perspective from the Global South as we speak right now?
Yes, what the climate crisis is doing is that it's exacerbating the vulnerabilities that already existed before. So the countries that have been colonized and the countries that have been exploited to sustain the system that we live in right now are the ones that are going to experience the most of climate change. And at the same time, natural disasters let's say, what is natural is the phenomenon, but what is social and what is constructed is the actual disaster. So what countries are not doing are investing enough on adaptation or investing enough on mitigation so that their cities, their countries can overcome these natural phenomena. And because we know that floods are going to increase, also droughts, and at the same time, our countries are not preparing for it. And what we must be doing is to call them out and to demand that there is finance that goes no more to the extractive industries that are creating this crisis, like the fossil fuels, like the factory farming, like the mining industries that continue to receive money from development banks. And instead, all this money should be led to the communities that are creating alternatives, that are strengthening the communities to be able to surpass this crisis.
To be really honest, the only thing that gives me hope here is to hear you guys talk, because I am amazed at how much you guys are involved and aware of the real causes of this issue. Emanuela, I want to talk about the importance of your work. And for this, I want to show you guys an article written by The Guardian. The newspaper spoke to 380 climate scientists about what they felt about the future. And here's what they said. They felt hopeless and broken and infuriated. One even said, we live in an age of fools. Add that to what the Global Witness report revealed, a very bleak number, 2,106 land and environmental defenders killed around the world between 2012 and 2023. That, combined with the criminalization of activism, makes it very difficult to do what you guys are doing right now. So my question to you, Emanuela, is, for example, do you feel safe today?
I really have to think about what to say at a particular given time and at a particular point, because we've had different governments rising massively against climate activists and environmental justice advocates. Personally, I worked on a case in Ghana where one of the NGOs sued the Ghanaian government, and I also worked with some climate activists in other countries in Africa. And personally, we were receiving death threats. At some point, I worked on something against the Chinese government, and we were told not to even post it on LinkedIn because they started sending us personal messages on LinkedIn. And those are means to discourage us to desist from what we are doing. But one thing I've realized about my generation and young people is that we are not afraid, because our future is at stake when it comes to climate action. And no amount of intimidation, no amount of threat would make us stop what we are doing. But yes, we feel unsafe as young people advocating for climate change.
Yeah, and that answer speaks volumes about the reality you all must face. Akash, on the good side of things, we also saw, and you all mentioned this already, quite a lot of mobilization, and especially on the part of young people, as well as collaboration between different struggles. We saw quite a lot happening around the issue of Palestine, for example. Can you talk to us about the interconnectedness of all these different fights?
So let's try to simplify it. Even when in India, if I'm sitting at the top state, which is Ladakh, and I'm eating a banana, my banana is traveling at least 2,000 kilometers from Bangalore, Karnataka. Or should I be consuming a food which is being traveled for 2,000 kilometers and it has a carbon footprint of itself because it's traveling? Now imagine the kind of weapons which has been fired on Palestine. How much energy did it take to manufacture these things? And then what are we using them? It's to destroy. At a point where we, human species, is sort of like in a crisis of survival on the face of Earth. So I really feel that by making these problems which are coming a lot from ego, or which is coming from the negative side of our heart, is sort of like digging the grave even deeper for all of us.
Jananina, I want to ask you about what I saw as a positive aspect, but perhaps I'm wrong here. Mexico elected a climate scientist with a doctorate in energy engineering who had helped to write the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Are you hopeful with that aspect? Or you mentioned before that you don't think real change, will come from the top. Do you think there's no other alternative? Or elections like this particular one, leaders like this particular one, could make a difference?
I think movements and I think theories of change and as well the things that we can do to fight the system, to fight the climate crisis can be very broad. Like some people do it from inside, some people do it from the outside. What we do is mostly mobilizing with people itself. But I do believe that we can interconnect and that we can come to agreements. What I do also think is that, at least in this specific case of Mexico, like the party that this new scientist represents is still the same one that is literally crossing the last rainforest of Mexico that hosts and the most underwater that we all rely on in Mexico. And because it's connected to an extractivist project that is going to be a train, but at the same time is the one that is consenting the territory to other extractive industries like the lithium industry to create now, in this sense of like clean energy, another type of extractivism that is not going to create jobs for people or is not going to actually help the people get out of poverty, but is actually going to give more money to the wealthiest people on earth. So I believe that at the same time that there can be hopes, there's also a lot of need to hold them accountable. So that if this is a climate scientist, that they keep true to that and they do not sell that all that reliability and all that trust that she has right now to the companies that are actually creating the crisis. So I believe that we do need to keep fighting, but at the same time not put all of our trust in one bucket, but actually be interconnected in like the mycelium network that we can create.
That was a very diplomatic answer to that question. Thank you so much. Emanuela, your take here in terms of what you saw in 2024 that gave you a little glimpse, perhaps, of hope.
So, being a young person from sub-Saharan Africa and doing all of the grassroots work that I've been doing in Ghana, for me, what gives me hope is the people that I represent and the people that I work for. And my approach to climate advocacy is to have local experience and take those local experiences to the global level when I'm in the negotiating room. And so that is the kind of representation I give to my people at the global level. And so to see that I'm fighting for the local, or about 35 million Ghanaians and other young people all over the world, that is what gives me hope. Another thing that gave me hope this year was the operationalization of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement. I know there's been a lot of backlash on that, but for countries like Ghana, who is actively seeking for climate finance and for support in mitigating our carbon emissions, the carbon market space is one. It's one of the good ways that we can, achieve that. And then the transparency mechanisms are very active. For me, that is one good way to advance in terms of climate action. I've also been very much encouraged with the kind of environmental cases across the world. It's super inspiring to see that so many people right now are aware about climate change and are holding their governments and international courts accountable to make pronouncements that will protect their lives. So for me, those are very inspiring turnouts in the year, and I'm hoping to see more of that in the coming years.
And that's precisely where we're going to end. I'm going to ask the three of you what you expect from 2025. Loads of things are set to happen. Obviously, we have a new occupant to the White House, arguably the most powerful country in the world elected a climate denier as their president, and so many other things are at stake here. What would you guys say are the areas that we should all be focusing on when it comes to the fight for climate and justice? Akash, you go first.
What I would really look forward to this year is that I'm not looking for more promises. I'm not looking for more treaty. I'm not looking for more papers signing, conferences where we meet and sign the paper. We have been signing papers, but what we do as a global population out there, or as countries or organizations, we do not act on those papers. We have signed Paris Treaty. Then now we are here in COP29, where we got amazing promises from the Azerbaijani government that this is what we are looking forward to do. This is the kind of money we are looking forward to invest. But in the end, it was all just on paper. We couldn't get anything out of it. So this year, I'm looking for action in one word.
Action. Shannoneen, your take. What would you like to see happen in 2024? What would you like to see more of?
I think that it is a mix of critical thinking and mobilizing, because I believe that the climate movement has a lot of work still to do to decolonize itself, to be opposing false solutions that are being pushed by the same wealthiest nations that are trying to push for mechanisms that are based on the market and that are not going to liberate anyone. And that at the same time, we interconnect the different struggles that are for life. Right now, I'm in Brazil because we are in a big an advocacy for Animal Summit, because we believe that our fight is for life, and the rights of nature are the rights of indigenous peoples, the rights of animals. So I believe that more and more we are starting to think that the climate movement, the social justice movement, and other movements are for the same. We want to transform the system that has created so much harm for so many forms of life. So what I am hoping is that we get more in these spaces that are not in agendas of multinational companies or multinational agreements, but are actually created by us, and that we are the ones that are actually shaping the future that we want to live in. The Zapatistas communities in Mexico say that we hope for a world where many other worlds fit, and another world is possible because it already exists. And I believe that we should be learning more of our ancestry and of our ancestral communities that are the ones that hold so much alternatives and so much solutions to the crisis that we live on right now. And so us indigenous peoples must be the ones that also live this way. And I believe that this is something that is happening more, and that I'm hopeful for that, because it is of us with people that all this can change.
Emanuela, final word from you. Your thoughts on what we should be looking out for in 2025, but also perhaps an invitation for people who are still timid and haven't really joined the fight. What would you say for those who are interested but haven't really done anything yet?
So in 2025, I want to see a climate and environmental conversation that is void of the geopolitics, because we've seen the impact of climate change in developed countries like Spain, the US, among others. And we've also seen the impact of climate change on small island states like Tuvalu, Kiribati, who are losing their countries to rising sea levels. And so that is my charge, to see a climate discourse void of geopolitics. Another thing is that I want to see 2025 where more young people are aware of climate change, that more young people are empowered and are charged up to fight for their rights when it comes to climate action, to hold their governments accountable, and also in their own little ways to contribute to climate action, because it is our future that is at stake, and not just our future, our present situation is at stake. And so that I really want to urge young people to take up the mantle, not to leave the conversation to the president and to the big guys up there, but we also have a voice in this conversation, and we must strategically use that voice to bring about change.
Awareness, critical thinking, mobilizing, and action. Thank you so much, Emanuela, Akash, and Shannoneen, for being part of the stream today. And thank you all for tuning in. Do keep the conversation going online. You can use the hashtag or the handle AJStream. Take care, and I'll see you soon.